All right, once I finish up the Basilisk, the next Patreon exclusive build will be this 1/100th scale Grays. Now, what this is, in the Gundam world, there's different series. There was the original Gundam series, Mobile Suit Gundam, and then there's been, Gundam Wing and Gundam 00. Well, this was one called Iron-Blooded Orphans. All of that doesn't really matter. You're not going to need to, if you don't have any knowledge of the lore at all, it's not going to really matter. Just think of this as a cool-looking, big, stompy robot that makes a fun model. But anyway, it's called the Grays. I have no idea why it's called the Grays. And you can build the standard type or the commander type, and the basic difference is one has an antenna and one doesn't. I'll probably just go with the standard type. Fewer parts to break off. Now, in my opinion, these Iron-Blooded Orphan 1/100 scale kits are some of the best kits Bandai has ever produced. And I know a lot of Gunpla builders would possibly disagree with me, but let me explain why I think that. Now, I've built plenty of 1/100 scale Gunpla. I've built master grade ones. I've built these are called, they were later called, kind of retconned into being called full frame mechanics. I've built some of the older 1/100 scale kits that are best described as HG kits. So I have plenty of experience with building kits with lots and lots and lots of parts. The reason I like these Iron-Blooded, the IBO, I'll call it IBO most of the time, the IBO kits, is because their parts count is very low. I love building Gunpla, but cutting off 300-400 parts off of the sprues, and if you're going to try and prime them and paint them ahead of time, I've gotten where I do more assembly and then just prime it and paint it while it's together. But if you're trying to do it ahead of time, and put everything up on these alligator clips, some people call them alligator clips. I call them pterodactyl clips. Thank you, Carl. I don't know why I do that bit every time. Anyway, I've got 200 of these, and there have been some kits that I'll have the parts mounted up on and won't have enough clips for the parts. These have a much lower parts count, so that I can feel confident when I direct somebody to, hey, you might like this kit or you might like that kit, that they're not going to hit this and this part, and when they get to like the nub cleanup and go, this just isn't worth it. This is, I had a friend who saw me early on when I started building Gunpla. He saw it, he liked it, went and got a kit, and after a few hours of nipping and cleaning up nubs, he put everything back in the box, said, this is not for me, and never got to the fun of the assembly because the kits fit so well. The assembly is just amazing on these. So I like recommending these because, one, the low parts count, but there's another reason that I think there's some, I wish Bandai would do more like this. Now you see here's some finished shots of the model itself, unpainted, just the bare plastic. But right here, the entire inner frame, except for the feet, which the feet are just solid green pieces. You just snap those on, so you can kind of ignore those for now. But the entire inner frame, it has a full inner frame, but that can be built up completely apart from the external armor. So it can be painted and weathered and everything like that, almost as a completely separate model. And then the armor pieces, which are fairly large, those can be painted separately and then put on it. They can be painted while on the model, if depending on how you're going to do it. So the assembly sequence is really nice, because in a lot of other master grade kits I've built and other 1/100 scale kits, you kind of have to integrate it together and come up with some creative ways if you're trying to paint the armor and then put it on later. And if there's any areas that have to be sanded out where there's going to be joins, you have to either glue the part together and fill the seam in and then come up with a clever way to get it onto the model, or you have to turn it into some kind of panel line or something like that. But with these, pretty much everything can just be put on afterwards, after the frame is assembled, and you don't have to worry about seam filling or anything like that. And generally, in the few cases where there is that, I just usually just turn it into a panel line. But for the most part, all of these armor chunks can just be stuck on after the inner frame is done. So you could put these up on clamps and you won't use near as many clamps, and you can do the base painting on these. And then once you have the base painting done, put it on here and just weather the whole thing. And it's a much more, in my opinion, a much saner build sequence. Oddly enough, I'm not a real big fan of any of the Iron-Blooded Orphan designs. They all have these high-heeled rock and roll boot kind of feet, which I think just look a little ridiculous. And the designs are, they're okay, but I would love if Bandai did, if you're familiar with what the GM is, the grunt suit of the Universal Century kits. I would love if Bandai did some 1/100 scale GMs based off of this type of frame. And another thing that's cool about this frame is I think in this series, in the Iron-Blooded Orphan series, they only use like 2 inner frame types for the models. So once you build this inner frame, if you build another one, it's the same experience and you can get through it quickly, and it's just got different armor on the outside of it. And that appeals to me. I like that modular approach to it. So even though the designs aren't my favorite, I think the Universal Century kits are more preferred designs in terms of their looks. The build on these are just so nice that I'm like, I'll overlook the odd designs that don't really do it for me quite as much. Now, for a 1/100 scale kit, you can see there's relatively few sprues. I mean, you've got a couple of the green armor parts. You've got 1, 2, 3, 3.5, I guess you'd say, of the gray parts. Some multicolored parts here. These are some alternate parts that you can use, and then you got your polycaps. It does have polycaps. But the frame parts are, you see, these parts are mostly big and chunky. I remember when I built the RX-78-2, the 3.0 version, I never finished that kit. It had so many parts in it, so many tiny little things. You could shake it like that and literally hear it rattle. You shook it hard enough, parts would fall off of it. It was actually the worst Bandai kit I've ever built, and it was supposed to be, their greatest. A lot of people loved it, but I threw it away. I got sick of it. It just was not fun. And but these, it's just large parts, and you see the armor parts. This is what I was talking about. The armor parts, there's just 2 sprues of them. That's not a lot of stuff. And the inner frame goes together really quickly. It's not lots and lots of tiny parts. It's just some big chunks, and you build a joint, and you build the forearm, and you build the upper arm, and you connect it to the shoulder, and you're done. So this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm really looking forward to this one. I've been planning on building this for a while, just because I enjoy this build experience. I don't know if I'm going to go with the Canon colors of the green. I may. I'm not sure yet. I haven't decided if inspiration will hit me. I'm not real sure, but it's going to be a fun kit, and I hope it's going to be a good build. And as I take you through it, hopefully it'll show, one, here's some things that if you are into these or have thought about getting into them will be helpful in terms of assembly and painting and things like that. But as always, most of what I'm going to be doing is just stuff you can apply to any model. I do plan on this one being fairly weathered. I will probably try and do more in scale weathering, considering this is 1/100 scale, so it's a 18 meter tall object, 65 feet I think. So I may try to do in scale weathering. I may not. I may just say forget it and just do it like it's a stompy-sized man robot, and not worry about it. Who knows? That's down the road. But this is what's coming in the next Patreon exclusive build. So I know quite a few folks have contacted me and said, "Hey, when are you going to build another Gunpla? Because it's been a while since I built one." So it's going to be once this Basilisk is finished. I won't get started on this until sometime after I get back from my vacation, but it is coming, and coming pretty soon.